You know, you can't really ignore the sort of economic climate right now.
Hmm.
Makes you wonder what people are actually spending on, especially, the bigger purchases.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today. We've got the latest earnings call from Titan Company Limited.
Right.
Think of it like a peek behind the curtain at a major player in jewelry and watches, seeing how they're handling things.
And what's really striking right off the bat is, despite everything, Titan actually did really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they crossed 50,000 crore in revenue. That's 22% growth for the whole year.
Wow, 22%.
And pretty much the same again in the last quarter, Q4. Another 22% jump.
Okay, so our mission today then is to really get under the hood of those numbers. We're
Right.
going to focus on their jewelry business.
Which saw, what, a 25% income jump in Q4? Pretty impressive.
Exactly. And we'll break it down what's happening with gold, with diamonds, both, natural and the lab-grown kind.
And how consumers, how you out there, are reacting to it all.
Yeah, understanding Titan's success might tell us something broader about where people are still willing to spend, what they value.
It's a great lens, really. Looking at Titan gives us insights into consumer trends, especially for those non-essential aspirational goods.
Like why some things stay strong even when budgets get tighter.
Precisely. What makes certain categories resilient?
Okay, let's start with the big one. Gold. Prices have been climbing.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be affecting how people approach buying gold jewelry, right? What did Titan say about that?
Yeah, this is a really key point, especially for uh, the more affordable end, say under 50,000 end.
Right.
The calls suggested customers in that bracket are becoming, well, a bit more hesitant.
Hesitant. Okay. Makes sense.
They're thinking harder before buying, not necessarily stopping, but definitely more cautious.
So are they just buying like significantly less gold then? Or smaller pieces?
Not necessarily less overall value or even less actual gold weight in total,
Okay.
but what they're choosing is changing.
Oh.
There's a definite shift. More openness to lower caratage, like 18 karat,
Okay.
and even 9 karat, which they offer through Carat Lane.
9 carat. Interesting. Is that widely accepted?
Well, it's not hallmarked yet, the 9 karat isn't. But Titan mentioned hallmarking is expected soon,
Ah, okay.
which could boost confidence in it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So lower caratage is one way to handle the price. What else are people doing?
Titan talked about customers scaling down the complexity.
Scaling down complexity. Meaning?
Simpler designs, things with lower making charges,
Yeah.
the craftsmanship cost.
Got it.
But they're still aiming to buy a certain amount, a certain value of gold. It's strategic.
So feedback directly from customers confirms this. They feel the pinch.
Absolutely. They said customers are actively looking for solutions, lightweight pieces, lower carats to fit their budget. The desire for gold is still there, just adapting.
It sounds like everyone's kind of hoping gold prices might ease off a bit. What's Titan's view? Would they like to see prices come down?
Oh yeah, definitely. They were quite clear they'd welcome a price correction.
Really? Why is that?
They think it could bring more people into the market. Just, widen the pool of buyers.
And maybe help their margins too.
Potentially, yeah. They even mentioned how past duty cuts by the finance minister help boost demand. So lower prices could be a win-win from their perspective.
Okay, that paints a clear picture for gold. Let's switch to the sparkle-studded jewelry. Diamonds. Sounds like that's a bit more complicated.
Definitely more nuanced. You've got to separate the solitaire market, the single big diamonds, from the rest of the studded category.
Which is the bulk of their business, right? The non-solitaires.
Exactly, like 95% of their studded sales, they said. Now, in solitaires, behavior changes a lot depending on the stone size.
Okay.
Interestingly, for the really big ones, like 1 carat plus, 2 carat plus, wholesale prices have actually dropped over the last 5 years.
Okay, wholesale prices are down. But what about retail? What you or I would pay in the store, are those prices lower too?
This is where it gets tricky. For those larger stones bought, say, 5 years ago, retail prices haven't really dropped much. Now, someone who bought maybe 2 years ago might think prices are down because of news reports and stuff.
Right, the media narrative.
Yeah, but the actual difference at the counter is maybe only around 5–6%, according to Titan.
So a disconnect between the market buzz and the actual store price.
Seems like it. And this might be making people looking at high-value solitaires a bit wary, hesitant to see them purely as investments, maybe.
Because of the price swings?
Potentially. And some might even be shifting back towards gold, looking for that stability.
Okay, so caution on the big stones. What about smaller diamonds?
Totally different story. Titan reported a whopping increase, their words and buyers, for smaller studded pieces.
Whopping increase. Wow. So big contrast then. Cautious investors on large diamonds, but a surge in people buying more accessible diamond jewelry.
Exactly. And here's something really interesting. For the last couple of quarters, and into April apparently, the number of people buying studded jewelry, any studded jewelry, not just solitaires, that growth has actually been faster than the growth in gold buyers.
Faster than gold buyers. That's surprising, given gold prices usually drive headlines.
It suggests a really strong underlying demand, or at least resilience, in the studded category.
That's a key insight. So what's Titan doing to, nurture this studded growth? What are their strategies?
They've got a few things going on. Aggressively pushing the smaller sizes through their network, for one.
Makes sense.
They're also playing across their brands, Tanishq, Carat Lane, Mia, targeting those sub 50,000 and sub 1 lakh price points specifically.
And seeing results there.
They mentioned early double-digit growth in those ranges, which sounds promising.
Okay.
And just like with gold, they're using lower caratage, 14 karat, even 9 karat in Carat Lane to hit lower price points for diamonds too,
Right.
making it more attainable.
It really sounds like accessibility is the name of the game. What about competition in this space? Is it getting tougher?
On gold pricing itself, things seem fairly stable competition-wise,
Right.
but on making charges, still very intense. Everyone's competing hard there.
Right.
And they said Q4 inflation didn't really change that dynamic much.
Oh.
Oh, and a quick clarification on that 23% sales growth number for Q4.
Yeah.
That includes some upstocking, basically, franchisees buying more inventory. The actual growth in sales to consumers, retail growth, was closer to 20%.
Ah, okay. So still strong, but a bit less than the headline number suggests, and buyer sentiment itself.
Still a bit muted, they indicated. The growth is coming more from the higher ticket size because gold is expensive, rather than a huge surge in new buyers across the board.
Got it. And profitability. How are the margins looking in jewelry?
Pretty healthy in Q4. The standalone EBIT margin was almost 12%, 11.6% for domestic jewelry, to be precise.
What drove that?
A mix of things. Operating leverage, basically, getting more efficient as sales rise, and also some gains from hedging.
Hedging, like managing currency risk.
Yeah, they mentioned a contango gain from forward contracts on international exchanges. But looking ahead, because gold prices are so uncertain,
Right.
they're keeping their margin guidance at 11.5%, playing it a bit safe.
Okay. And tariffs. Any impact there?
Nope, they said no significant impact in Q4, and they don't expect any issues going forward.
And just drilling down on studded for a secondary sales growth, like actual consumer purchases.
Yeah, that was around 11-12% in Q4 for studded, pretty much in line with the overall studded category growth.
One last thing on studded exchanges. Do people often trade diamond pieces back in for cash?
Interestingly, no. Very low incidence of that in India, apparently.
Why not?
It comes back to that store value idea.
Yeah.
Even with diamonds, people see it as holding value.
So they trade up, not cash out.
Exactly. They're much more likely to exchange an old piece towards something new, something bigger, which for Titan often means an upsell.
That really underlines the unique role jewelry plays here. Okay, let's shift to the really hot topic. Lab-grown diamonds. LGDs. What's the latest from Titan's perspective?
Well, the big news is a price crash. Wholesale prices for LDDs have dropped significantly.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
And retail is following. Prices that were maybe $50,000, $60,000 per carat are now down around $30,000 for many sellers.
Wow, that's a big drop.
And new players keep jumping into the market. It's very dynamic.
So is it a sustainable business for retailers right now? What's Titan's take?
They seem a bit uncertain about the unit economics. Unless, they said, LGDs bring in a whole wave of new buyers to the studded category overall.
And Titan themselves, are they getting into LGDs?
They're being cautious. The phrase they used was, "We'll keep thinking about it."
It's holding back for now.
Yeah. They feel the market hasn't really stabilized yet, and customer demand isn't totally clear or consistent. They said it's just too early to call its viability.
So they're watching the consumer reaction closely.
Exactly. Their main focus seems to be assessing, is this actually relevant to their customers long term?
And what are they seeing there?
Some confusion, maybe hesitation, especially for first-time diamond buyers who really value that natural aspect.
And the store value thing again.
That plays a big role, yeah. Yeah. Even as perceptions are different elsewhere, like in the U.S., they find Indian consumers here still strongly link value with natural diamonds.
So internally, they don't have a firm view yet on how LGDs will impact the natural diamond market.
It sounds like it's still an open question for them. Depends heavily on whether LGDs actually expand the market or just cannibalize natural sales.
A very watchful approach then. Okay, let's briefly check in on the other parts of Titan's business. Watches, eyewear, Carrot Lane.
All showing decent growth in Q4. Watches and wearables income was up 20%,
Driven by?
analog watches and their premium brands, apparently.
Yeah.
Eye care was up 16%, helped by international brands and sunglasses. And Carrot Lane, excluding bullion and digital gold, saw income grow 23%. Their studded jewelry did well too, up 19%. So, yeah, positive signs across those divisions.
Good to hear. What about their physical stores? Any shifts in their strategy for franchises or opening new locations?
Yeah, they're experimenting with a model called FOCO, franchise-owned, company-operated.
OFOCO, like some competitors do.
Exactly. They mentioned drawing inspiration from Cullinan, for instance. And it's not just about saving capital, apparently.
Oh, what else?
Succession planning with long-term partners, managing business complexity as they grow, those kinds of things.
And concrete plans for new stores.
Yep, looking at opening 40, 50 new Tanishq stores in India next fiscal year. Mostly franchised, focused on those L2, L3, smaller city formats.
40 to 50, okay.
And, maybe just as important, they're planning a major refresh, renovating, relocating, or expanding 50 to 60 existing stores.
Ah, investing in the current network too. Smart. Okay, finally, let's wrap up with the overall financial picture and their outlook.
Sure. They mentioned working capital increased,
Why was that?
mainly the rise in gold price, making their inventory worth more on paper, and some deliberate inventory investments too.
Okay.
But they did caution that the year-end balance sheet number reflects a March buildup, so it might look a bit higher than the average for the year.
And those hedging gains we talked about, significant impact.
Not huge, not big enough to call out separately, but they did contribute positively to the EBIT margin in Q4.
Right. And looking forward, how do they see the jewelry market shaping up?
Still pretty bullish. They're targeting healthy double-digit growth in the coming years.
Driven by what? Ticket size? More buyers?
A mix of both, ideally. They see some positive signs ahead, a strong wedding season, expected in Q1 of the next fiscal year.
Okay.
Continued government spending on infrastructure, maybe some boost from IT refunds, putting money in people's pockets.
Sounds optimistic. And any news on dividends for shareholders?
Yes, they recommended a dividend of 11 per share for the financial year 25, subject to approval, of course.
11 rupees.
And just to reiterate that big headline number, they crossed 50,000 crore in total income for the year.
Quite a milestone.
Yeah, 22% growth overall. And the jewelry division alone brought in over 46,500 crore, growing at 21%. Huge part of the business.
So wrapping it all up, it feels like high gold prices are definitely reshaping how people buy gold, pushing towards affordability.
More affordable options.
But the studded market is showing surprising life, especially in buyer numbers, though it's complex, with different dynamics at different price points.
Right. And LGDs are still very much a developing story. Lots of change, lots of uncertainty about where consumers will land.
And Titan's response seems to be adapting products, being smart about store locations, and managing the finances carefully.
Exactly. For me, the real eye-openers were just how resilient that studded buyer growth is.
Yeah, that was surprising.
The sheer scale of the price drop in LGDs that market is churning, and Titan actually welcoming a gold price drop. That's quite telling.
Definitely food for thought there. So here's something for you, the listener, to chew on. With all these shifts, how might our traditional view of jewelry, as both adornment and investment, how might that evolve?
Good question.
What role will things like lab-grown diamonds, different materials, different pricing approaches play in that evolution? Worth thinking about maybe next time you're browsing or just watching the market.
Yeah, it definitely makes you wonder about the future of value and how we express ourselves through these items.
Well, thanks for diving deep into Titan's earnings call with us. We hope it gave you a clearer picture of what's shaping the jewelry world right now.
Hope it was useful.
And we look forward to exploring more fascinating sources with you in our next deep dive.